was like,
Oh, yeah.
I'll switch once that starts.
Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to East Dundee's regular meeting of the Board of Trustees dated Monday, November 4th, 2024 at 6 p.m. I got 6:02. Catherine, will you take the roll?
Trustee Mahoney.
Here.
Trustee Coonsey.
Present.
Trustee Britton.
Here.
Trustee Saviano.
Here.
Trustee Triber will not be here. Trustee Sauter.
Here.
And President Lineham.
Here. And if you rise with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And that will take us to public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to address the board on an agenda or a non-agenda item? Seeing none. Okay, that'll take us, announcements, I don't believe we have any. Nope. That'll take us to our consent agenda. We just have a short one, so if we could have a motion.
I will move to approve regular village board meeting minutes dated October 7th, 2024, and I will move to accept the warrants list in the amount of $3,729,510.76.
second.
All the debts.
Okay, anybody questions, comments, changes? No? Catherine?
Trustee Mahoney.
Yes.
Trustee Coonsey.
Yes.
Trustee Britton.
Yes.
Trustee Saviano.
Yes.
And Trustee Sauter.
Yes.
Okay, that'll move us to our regular agenda items. It's just going to be a discussion evening, so we're going to start out with the water and sewer rate discussion. So Phil, do you want to open this one up? We have Baxter and Woodman, I believe. So
Sure can, yes,
Appreciate it.
yes. Just a quick introduction, and then Baxter Woodman will give a presentation on the rate scenarios, proposed rate scenarios. As you may recall, last December, the village approved an agreement with Baxter and Woodman to conduct a water and sewer rate study. Since that time, staff has provided various information that Baxter and Woodman has compiled and subsequently developed rate scenarios for both water and sewer. With us this evening are Mark, Allison, and Carolyn to present the rate scenarios. A couple things I do want to mention, though, first is that the proposed budget for 2025 that we'll discuss later this evening does contemplate rate increases per the rate structure that was approved back in 2017, which was subsequent to the Trotter water and sewer rate study. Subsequent to tonight's discussion, whether it's now or perhaps after the budget discussion, staff would be seeking some direction as to whether you would like to adjust the rates further for water and sewer, or perhaps give it a little contemplation and consideration and discussion before the budget is finalized. So with that, I'd like to invite Mark up, Mark Seifert, and of course Allison and Carolyn are here as well.
Thank you, Phil. As Phil mentioned, my name is Mark Seifert. I'm with Baxter and Woodman. I've had the unique honor of being a public works director in the past as well. So I've sat in Phil's chair, and obviously asking for a lot of infrastructure work is always a difficult conversation. But especially here in East Dundee, it's been a pleasure working with staff to come up with these proposed rate increases and all the projects that are hopefully in the near future for the village. So, sorry, let me get the keyboard in front of me, if I can move this along. So what we'll be going over tonight is we will go over a study overview, go over some of the assumptions, capital projects overview, that is, there are quite a bit of capital needs in the village, preliminary rates study scenarios, rate impacts and sample bills, and then the last one, most importantly, is how do you compare to your neighbors? That is always a question that boards and councils are at their forefront. So at Baxter, when we do rate increases, we look to monitor the rate increases based on the needs of aging infrastructure, building financial reserves, and funding those capital needs. As Phil has mentioned to you in the past, the village is working on an IEPA loan project plan with a handful of projects in it. We're going to go over some of those in a minute with some of their costs, but that's really what we're trying to fully fund, is that IEPA project plan paying those loans back, along with there's lead service line needs, there's the standpipe, the water tower, all sorts of a wide array of capital needs in the village. So the 8-year capital plan for the village is at $7.9 million of known capital. And the reason I have known there is because you operate your own wastewater treatment plant. You operate wells. Unfortunately, as much as Phil and Greg and staff plan for the worst, unfortunately things do happen. So those are the capital needs identified. 6.37 million in water and around 800,000 in sewer. As we work on the population usage projections, at Baxter and Woodward, when we do our rate studies, we do not increase population and we do not increase water usage. The reason we do that is because we want to be conservative, because what will happen is, and we've seen this happen in many communities, is when a community raises rates, people start using less water. Also, we cannot guarantee any more populations coming in. You know, we can have the best projection. Sorry, go ahead.
You got those numbers up there. Are you going to explain and break down what those numbers are?
Next slide.
Okay.
Yep, sorry. I teased you a little bit, and then I'll go right into it. Yeah, sorry.
Not a problem.
It might be one slide after, I apologize.
That's fine.
We do increase the expenses in the village here. The operation and maintenance was increased at 3% per year, and salaries per staff recommendation was at 5% per year. So we did bump our expenses up while not increasing our revenue. We do look at having rates increase scheduled 2025. I was true, it is the next slide. So some of the large projects that make up some of those large numbers, well 6 rehab, that's slated at $550,000. Sorry.
Which well is that? Where's that
Well
well?
6 is the deep well at the water treatment plant. So we have 2
Okay.
wells, 5 is shallow, 6 is deep.
Okay, so over near the water tower that also needs rehab.
68 water tower.
Yeah.
is where our water treatment plant is.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the well that was brought online in 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Since it was, for the first time since it was drilled in 2012 or 2012.
Right, there was problems getting it up and going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So well 6 is scheduled for $550,000. That's in fiscal year 2028. Lead service lines, which you have been hearing a lot about. We have $500,000 in 2025 budget next year, which they'll be presenting on shortly. And then the rest of the lead service lines are in the IEPA loan repayment. The IEPA loan totals more than $3 million for lead service lines and a couple other projects, including the water tower painting, which we have scheduled for $900,000 in fiscal year 27. Standpipe repairs, $700,000 in fiscal year 26. Sewer repairs at $100,000 yearly. That's to maintain the ongoing I&I issues. And then future projects, Phil has identified, along with Baxter Woodman, water main projects that need to be, water main that needs to be replaced. So starting in fiscal year 27, we do have $600,000 for water main replacement as a yearly capital item. So we started off with 5 scenarios, and then we narrowed it down to 3 to present to you tonight. The first scenario is the baseline scenario. That includes a fully funded capital plan, and then all it includes is the previously approved rate increases that the village has, the schedule you've been on. Scenario 1A includes a fully funded capital plan. It includes the previous rate study increases along with volumetric rate only increases. I'm going to break down your water bill in a second. Scenario 2 is a fully funded capital plan. It's a tiered rate structure, which we'll go over, and it does have increases to your volumetric and fixed fees. Scenario 1B had a reduced capital plan. After talking to staff, a reduced capital plan would not meet the village's needs, so it was not explored further. And then scenario 1C, we looked at front-loaded capital, since you do have a good fund balance at the moment, but it resulted in much higher bills at the back end, so we did not go and explore that one past the initial phase. So the 2 scenarios, scenario 1A and 2, are the top scenarios that we have found that have meet the fully funded capital plan, as well as have the least impact to your residents. If the village wants to fully fund all of the capital projects, you would not be able to starting in FY30 with just your simple 3% increase. So this is, right off the bat, as soon as we look at the 3% increase, we see that we need a rate increase because the amount of capital projects and infrastructure coming down the line, and to fully fund those, the baseline of 3% only is not going to be able to handle it. Sorry,
What will?
we're gonna get there.
Oh, okay.
I like to show you what we can't do, and then we're gonna get to the where I give you. I want to really, it's your decision. There's two options. They're both very similar options, but at the end of the day, it's the board's guidance. So currently, the volumetric fee is measured in 1,000 gallons, and then there is a fixed meter charge. It's based on meter size and is charged for water and sewer. So there's two components of the water bill: the volumetric, and then the fixed fee. The fixed fee everyone pays every month. The volumetric, the more you use, the more you pay.
Okay, so is it every month or is it bi-monthly?
Bi-monthly, I apologize.
So the rate is that you're quoting is actually 2 months?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I just.
I had one of these last week, and I had monthly on the brain. And I knew I was going to mess it up at least one time.
No, you did fine.
So, scenario one. To fully fund the capital plan, it would need for water, a 10% increase to the volumetric rate. This is inclusive of the already planned 3%. So it'd be an additional 7%.
Is that 10% over the course of
10% yearly,
every year?
every year. And then sewer would not increase at all. It would be 3%, which you already have planned to continue on. So the sewer would not go up. The reason for the split increases is because you do have a water system, and then you have a sewer system that may have capital needs eventually. So to raise them both equally, when a majority of your capital needs right now, as you saw, it's almost 7 million compared to 800,000. Your needs are really on the water side, and that's where when we broke apart your revenues and expenses, your sewer was at a healthy point. The water is where you needed the help. Can show no changes to the fixed meter charge. So the fixed meter charge right now would stay the same. It would just be the volumetric that would be increasing. And I do have breakdowns of the numbers coming up. So on the very top is the 10% increases. Right now you're at 945. It would go to 1040, 1143, 1258, and across the board. Everything else on here stays the same. There's no increases on any of the fixed meter charges. So the per meter sizes stay the same. Only that top column is changing. That is the 10% increase each year. For sewer, it's the 3% which you already have on the books to maintain. It's 3% every year. You jump from 827, and then in fiscal year 32, you're at 1048. So, I do have sample bills at the end of the presentation, so you can actually see what that does to an average resident and a commercial resident, or a commercial user as well. So, we're showing your operating expenses, your debt service, your water capital, your sewer capital, showing that, you know, in some years, based on the capital needs, we are at a fund, we do anticipate you being at a fund deficit. But you do have a healthy fund balance, so the village can absorb some of that. But in years 28, 31, and then 32, we get above those expenses. So we do project in year 32, we can start flatlining down to that 3% increase that you have every year.
Yeah, but we won't know for how long that flat line's gonna last. I mean,
It-
we could say just because at this point in 2032, we're gonna get above our expenses. That's all well and good.
You're gonna get,
It's gonna be a firestorm between now and 32 with the residents, but that's another conversation. But as soon as we get here and it flatlines out, there's no way to know how long that's gonna last.
no, and there isn't, and that's unfortunate. So when we do these projections, we do 8 years because I'll be honest with you, there could be, depending on what happens tomorrow, you know, there could be, or whatever, any election, any cycle, you've seen every 4 years there's changes. honestly, we do these 8-year projections, but you look at that first 4 to 5 years where we have real good confidence. Before COVID happened, we didn't think these prices were going to go through the roof like we have seen. So really, I 100% understand what you're saying. We don't know how long we can flatline, but at least we're getting above your expenses. And then, as you'll see later on in the presentation, you guys have done, you guys are ahead of the curve where last rate study was in 17, you're doing it again in 24. There's communities out there who haven't done them in 10, 15 years. So you're at least looking at it. I know Brandis looks at it yearly. You make small changes instead of large changes further down the road. We can actually manage this, and in 2032, maybe we don't need to do another jump. We can just tailor it a little bit.
Did part of the study at all include comparison with other communities?
That's the last couple slides.
Okay.
Yep. That's the neighboring rates is the last couple slides. Sorry.
So we have like a capital fund specifically dedicated to water and sewer. So is that included in that brown area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So the debt service is your IEPA loan payment.
Right, okay.
So debt service is IEPA loan payment, and then the water CIP and sewer CIP is cash funded.
Okay.
Yep. So we look to the blue and then I'm terrible at colors. So it's like orange, brown, and then blue, yellowish on the top. The blue, yellowish are cash funded. The brown next to the orange, between the orange and blue, is debt funded, which is your IEPA loan, the project plan that we talked about a couple slides ago.
And CIP is?
Capital improvement plan.
Okay, thanks.
My apologies on not writing that out. So the next option, scenario 2, is a tiered rate structure with a full capital improvement plan. So the tiers that were found to work best on the usage rates in East Dundee, Tier 1 is 0 to 10,000 gallons, Tier 2 is 10,000 to 500,000, and then Tier 3 is above 500,000 gallons. I like to put this slide up there because I'm not sure if everyone understands how tiered rates work. So we put 2 examples up on the board. A resident that uses 12,000 gallons bi-monthly, their usage is included in Tier 1 and Tier 2. Their first 10,000 gallons is at 10,000 gallons, or the Tier 1. Their last 2,000 gallons are at Tier 2 to make their total bill. A resident or a business that does 600,000, their usage is included in each. The first 10,000 gallons they pay for the 10,000 in Tier 1. Gallons 10 through 500,000 or 500,000 are at Tier 2, and anything above 500,000 would be in Tier 3, and you add them together. So it's not, just when you hit Tier 3 doesn't mean you pay all Tier 3 rates. You break it up based on the usage in those rates. Any questions on that before I move on? Because I know sometimes this is a little bit of a sticking point.
I'm on a private well. You guys with homes and that are on, like, what does an average home end up using?
The average, we have the averages.
Okay,
thanks. So the average
Sorry,
resident here is,
I just
the average resident here is between 8 and 10,000 gallons.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So you'll see we use 10,000 a lot. We use 10,000 in our sample bills as well. So we're calling 10,000 gallons as the average resident. In a community that does not bill bi-monthly, 5,000 is the average for most residents. Since you're bi-monthly, it's 10,000.
So most residents wouldn't be even hitting Tier 2?
No, they would not. And I do have usage breakdowns and I have usage breakdowns by tier as well.
Didn't you say 90% fall into tier 1?
No, 99% are in Tier 1 and Tier 2. It's about 1% in Tier 3. And I can give you the exact numbers. It is, right now your usage is 29%, I'm sorry. Your revenue is 29%, would be 29% Tier 3, 35% Tier 2, and 37% Tier 1. So it's a pretty good split. It's about a third, a third, a third.
So a car wash is going to probably be the only thing in Tier 3. We've
So
got 3 of them.
Tier 3 actually is,
A water park?
Which one?
Water
A
park.
water
so your top 10 is the water department, King Avenue, 528 King Avenue, 560 Rock Road, Then you have True Blue Car Wash, Gardener,
Gardner Place.
Village Green, and Santa's Village. The 528 King Avenue and 560 Rock Road, I'm not sure exactly what those were.
That might be the Shell, that's a car wash too.
Okay.
But what's King?
Road is
Oh. And so, yeah, King Avenue, 528 King Avenue, I couldn't find that one.
That's all residential.
Residential, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a resident.
Looks like a townhome. Oh,
That's a big residence.
So it's a lot of water, but that was one of the top. So these are, how we broke it down is someone who used 500,000 gallons in a billing cycle. So that could have been an anomaly at a leak, but it was a usage of that much. So I have multiple keyboards up here. So if we went to the tiered rate structure, we would look at an increase in tier 1 at 10%, 15, and 20, and then they slowly start coming down as the years go on in the CIP. The sewer volumetric is the first 3 years, it's a 3% increase, and then it's back-loaded where in years 5 through 8, it goes up to 5% increases. The fixed meter charge on water would increase $2 the first 3 years. Years 1, 2, and 3. No sewer meter charge increases, and no increase in years 4 through 8 on the water fixed meter charge.
Why the need for a fixed meter charge on water?
Why the fixed meter charge?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fixed cost. Why are we increasing it?
It's increased revenue.
Just for the purpose of increasing revenue?
So what we do is we broke down and we look at, is it better to increase the fixed meter scale or increase volumetric? What gets you the lower increase on the bills? And that's how we're looking at it, is to mitigate those mitigate the bill to the resident. And by doing a fixed meter scale, we could keep the volumetric lower.
I don't think the resident's going to care whether or not their fixed meter is higher and the volumetric is lower. The overall bill is going to be higher, and that's what they're going to come to us for.
So, just to ruin the punchline at the end, tier 2 in fiscal year 32 is a lower bill.
And can I ask, and this may be getting ahead of it too, is there any magic to 2032? I mean,
8 years.
I know, I realize.
Oh.
Between where we are now and getting there, I mean, we want to be able to get to a self-sufficient fund by 2032. I get that. Why? I mean, where's the pressure? I mean, can't we spread that out to 2040? And instead of a 10% increase yearly, knock it down to 5, or, you know.
So you could, but then the capital needs aren't going to be at the rate that the village and staff are looking to have the capital needs done by. So we're like I mentioned, we're fully funding the capital program. So so the capital projects I mentioned, the well, the water tower, the standpipe, those things are all critical needs. Lead service lines, you're under a pressure, or you're under a timeline. Water main, from hearing from these guys, it's still breaking. So starting in 27, we're looking at adding money to that. The sewer, still doing I&I replacement. So it's to fully fund the capital plan that we. So how to pull back the curtain a little bit, we're given the budget and the capital needs, and we see what do we need to do to fully fund the needs that the village is requesting.
I get it.
Does that answer it?
It does. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and I mean, another immediate question that comes to mind is, when it comes to lead line service replacement, guys, that doesn't necessarily have to be paid for out of the water fund.
Yes,
I mean,
it does. Why wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. That's my point. I mean,
I think
Where do you
the
suggest
why
it come
wouldn't
from?
it is because then we wouldn't have to add it to residents' funds.
yeah, and okay.
I mean,
That's a policy question. That's not a
Right.
that's a policy decision. That's not a. We do it on the rates because obviously it's a water and sewer rate study. I don't make general fund decisions.
So it's an important point to bring up, though, because we had this conversation a couple months ago. Looking at a 10% rate increase for our village to fully fund the lead service line replacements, I gotta say, very good news. We can make other decisions about how to fund this, or we can say we're going to fully fund it through the water and sewer fund. But if we decide to fund it through other mechanisms, we're going to have to decide what else we're not going to do in order to take that money away from something else. But there's many communities across the state that are looking at 20, 30, 40% increases, and we're looking at 10. So nobody ever looks at a rate increase and is like, hooray, but the reality is our situation is dependent on two variables. We're a very small community. We don't have a lot of residents or businesses to spread this out amongst. So you have a small pool of people paying for the same infrastructure, whether we're pumping the amount of gallons we have here or the amount of gallons in West Dundee. West Dundee has a tremendous amount more people to pay for the same exact thing. So, and when you get to the slide that is bearing the lead at the end of like how we compare to everybody else, we're not far off.
No.
So that's a good thing. But
Well,
the policy decision before you tonight or in the coming month/year will be, do we want the water and sewer fund to self-sustain, or do we want to use other funds to help support it? Now, in the past, that's been done. It's not a best practice, but it is a practice. It's a policy decision for everybody to give us direction on.
I'll just say, the thing I hear most from residents in this village, the water is too expensive and the quality is not good. Both of those things are number one and number two that I hear the most.
I concur.
And we're going to say, okay, well, the solution to that is we're going to double your bill over the next 8 years. It's going to be a tough hill to swallow.
I think if we could concentrate on quality and try and mimic whatever Carpentersville is doing, and we've talked about this before, that will go a long way to quelling people's angst over the increase in price. Because if they're getting a substandard product for an inflated price, man, that's a dagger, and they're not going to buy that. But if they're getting high quality water, and yeah, the price is a little high, it's a lot easier to swallow. So we need to have that conversation again offline, but I get the exact same thing.
And if I could add something too, part of the discussion is one thing that will help in improving water quality. I mean, we've discussed this many times. We meet all IEPA compliance standards. Haven't had, I don't know if we've ever had a violation, but we are fully compliant with all of our water quality standards. That being said, we've identified parts of town where our infrastructure, so our water main infrastructure, we have some dead ends, we have some aging pipes. All of those are going to be considered for improvements in the coming years. I believe we've deferred the water and sewer wastewater facility plans, but in 2026 we're proposing to study our treatment plants. We've already, and Baxter has already helped us survey our existing water main infrastructure. So we're going to be proposing in the coming years water main replacement projects that will help improve water quality. So we do have, and I think that kind of pulls right into discussion, we have a lot of projects that, I wouldn't say a lot, but we do have projects and some large dollar projects that are not yet in any of this planning because it hasn't been studied yet, or we haven't been able to incorporate those improvements into our future plan.
Okay. No, I get that, and I mean, I know dead ends are gonna do it, but even if we had the town on one endless loop, and there weren't any, it would just be a treatment question, which Carpentersville is pulling their water out of the same ground that we are.
Well, that's something we are
And,
looking into,
I mean,
because, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that, they're getting, accolades from the state year after year, and we're getting our complaints.
It's my understanding, and we've talked about this, in fact, Greg and I have talked about this, not daily, certainly weekly. We've invited Mark out recently and we've had some of our vendors come out, and we're continuously looking at ways to improve the quality of our water product. We are different from Carpentersville in that we produce water 50/50 into the system from one shallow and one deep well. I believe they're 100% shallow, wasn't it?
Correct.
100% shallow. So we're looking right now at, and in fact, we're proposing a study next year to kind of look at wells 5 and 6. We're blending the water into the treatment plant 50/50 from those two wells. Do we need to make adjustments? Are we pulling from one well? Do we 75/25? We're 60/40? We're not sure. That's one thing that we're going to look at next year is are we blending our water and pushing into the distribution system at a percentage that is ideal for our treatment plant and our community?
But what,
I don't know if that makes sense.
what you're saying, though, the message that I'm getting, is that you feel it's coming out of the plant good, but by the time it gets to the sink, it goes through old pipes, whatever.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
And then it gets
Yes.
to the point where it's
100%,
substandard.
that's correct.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know what the treatment study is gonna do in that sense.
Some of it's going to be involved replacing our water mains in the future. Thought of the water mains themselves and some of the discoloration that we've experienced.
Some of the older main, obviously, not only is it older, but it's cast iron, it's not lined. So any of that water, and then to add to that, a lot of the older stuff is where the dead ends are. So now you've got older main, which is unlined, with older water in it, and it's just, one thing after another after another.
It's
Add
got
to the
two
negative
strikes
effects
against it,
and water that may have a very small amount of iron in it when it leaves the plant, by the time it gets to the tap,
Exactly.
has now gained more iron than it had when it came out of the ground.
Right. And I understand.
Can water mains be lined without digging?
I believe they can.
Yes.
We haven't
Rather
looked at it
than
in-house extensively, but I know that it is something that has come.
You can line water main, it just, if you're in a line water main, you have to make sure that the size is what you want it for future needs. Usage is
Before you
going up,
spend
houses
on
are
it.
getting bigger, people are using more. Fire requirements are one that really drives water main sizing. The fire department and the new ISO ratings are really what's kind of pushing mains to be larger and hydrants to be closer together. So it's kind of that balance of, do you line and keep a smaller undersized main, or do you dig up and put a new main in? And that's where you look at the cost benefit of it.
Lining-
Just to be, sorry, just to
No, I get that.
input.
Lining will reduce the capacity of the pipe.
Well, significantly? I mean, the material, what are they just, it's just a neoprene, isn't it? A coating?
No, it's like a sock.
Yeah, but I mean,
It's probably
it's
a
like a
half inch.
platter, but it goes up against, I mean, what are the thickness, the
Half
reduction of maybe that much?
Yeah, probably a quarter inch on each side.
And I'll just add, just to jump in here on this, so lighting is always an option that should be reviewed when you're looking to do infrastructure renewal. Take a look and see if it's a good application, but if you do have a lot of surfaces, you still have to dig up those surface locations, so you start losing the cost effectiveness of lighting.
No, I get
So we would
that.
take a look at that for every project and see if you get a good cost for it.
I guess in our instance, the benefit would be that we're kind of landlocked, and as small as we are, our opportunity for growth is limited.
Yeah,
So-
your biggest thing, like Carolyn mentioned, is the amount of services. I actually, just where I came from as a public works director, we did a lining, and because of the amount of services, you had to put a temporary main on the side of the road above ground and have, so that, people see it, people are trying not to run into it when they're driving, there's weeds, it's all the ancillary stuff that you see when you line mains with a lot of services.
I mean, the lead pipe replacement, is that, I mean, that's gonna replace a lot of old pipes. Is that going to help our quality, or is lead considered iron, so it doesn't really add to that iron level anyways?
Right, that's gonna help the water quality as far as the lead goes, but
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what
Right.
residents are seeing when they see
Exactly.
visual water quality problems. Replacing the lead service is not gonna change that.
Just moving on to the tiered rates, looking at them, what the rates actually does. we go start in next year at 2040, get up to 1498 in tier 1, 1793, and then 2050 in tier 3, all the way at the end. And then for sewer, you go from 852 to 1131.
Oh, that's 25. Could you go back to water? real quick?
Absolutely.
So it's going to be 1040 next year, is it?
Yes.
That's tier 1?
Tier 1 is 1040, 1087, and then 1134 in tier 3. And then you see the fixed fees going up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, I mean, with a 15% hit and a 20% on tier 2, isn't there a way we can smooth that out a little bit by extending beyond 32? I mean, even to 35, 36, it isn't going to kill us. And I realize that the capital improvements are what we, are focusing on here, and, having a self-sustaining fund is where we want to be. But that kind of increase is going to get more phone calls to me than anything else.
Everyone
else on the board is going to get them too.
I 1,000%
So I'm just
understand. It's
anticipating it. Because I mean, we already I get my share, and I mean, and it is what it is. I mean, there's no, fingers being pointed or blame or anything like that. I mean, it's going to cost what it costs, but I've had friends and others who've called me and discussed it, who've done what we're going to be getting to at the end and compared it to other municipalities, and East Dundee is high. And it's high because we've got, like Erica said, fewer establishments.
you can't spread it out over. You can't
Right.
spread it out over the amount of people like Erica mentioned, West Dundee. Yeah.
Nobody buys that though. That's the problem.
So with the tiered rate structure, we do meet all of our goals again. We do have years like 29, 30, and 31 where we are a little under the projected expenses, but that is with the healthy fund balance. Go ahead, Mr.
So the
President.
debt service component of these bars are actually increasing over time.
They're the same.
Yeah, they're relatively steady for the last 4 years or so, but
It's this.
it's the brown portion, correct?
Sorry, I didn't mean to show
I'm sorry, I thought the bottom half.
There's got to be a pointer. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, everybody didn't need to see my unathletic ability here.
Okay.
No, that's a good job.
So that right there.
Oh,
There
I
you
was
go.
thinking it was the bottom portion. I was going to say, we're only, we're
So
only
these
half.
numbers right here, that's your total that's your operating expenses.
Okay.
And those are the ones that are increased at 3% for O&M and 5% for salary. So yes, these are, the red is increasing every year. This number is consistent. This is your IEPA loan payment. The blue is cash funded, and then this greenish yellow is your sewer cash funded.
So we're not just paying interest, because I mean, that looks like that service is just maintaining the same amount.
This one right here?
Yeah.
It's the same amount. It is the same amount. Your loan payments will be about $330,000 per year.
So how much of the principal are we knocking down year after year? It doesn't look like much.
It's so on IEPA loan, and Carolyn, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but IEPA loan, you get your loan disbursement, and it's just the same payment every year until like the last year or two. So the way IEPA loan does their payments is they flatline your loan payments, so you're paying a consistent number. It's not like your mortgage where the more you pay on your principal, it goes down.
What is the length?
The IEPA loan, what is the term?
So currently, for you, it will be 30 years. If you are allowed to ask for 20, but you have to get approval from the IEPA for 20, but is a 30-year loan.
Does the rate go up at 20?
How the IEPA loan rates are set is that they take the loan rate for the previous 12 months. So on July 1st of next year, they'll look at June through June of the previous year, and they'll set the loan rate at the average. So right now, I believe it is
I think it's like 2.1%.
2.1, and then there are deductions for principal forgiveness and decreases in your percent. If you could show you're a disadvantaged community, if you could show your MH&I is lower than the state average, other things like that, we could bring it down a little bit. But by far, the IEPA loan is the lowest borrowing right now at 2.1%.
So from a cash flow standpoint, it makes sense to go 30 years. There's really no incentive to shorten it.
Absolutely. That's,
They just started doing 30-year loans.
yeah, that just changed February of this year. So previous to February of this year, you had to ask for a 30-year loan. So now it's the other way. You have to ask for a 20-year. It's a standard 30, you have to ask for 20. Previously, you ask for 20, or you get 20, you ask for 30. So residential sample bills, I think this is one thing we really want to focus on here. Scenario 1A, the bi-monthly total would be $202 next year, and then $206 for scenario 2. This is for a person who uses 10,000 gallons a month and has a 3/4 inch meter.
2 months.
2 months. Once again, I'm sorry. It's 2 months. They're roughly $101 a month, but for 202 for 2 months. For a commercial user that uses 150,000 gallons. And then I want to go to, and I have a comparison for you as well. So, as you can see, next year, residential is 202, 206, so the tier 2 is slightly higher in the beginning. Then if you look in 2032, it flips the other way
Right,
by a good portion,
right.
almost $32. So,
10%.
sorry, that,
10%.
yeah.
Designer math.
So, scenario 2 in the tiered rate structure, where you use the more you pay, the more you use, the more you pay. Scenario 2 in 2025 is a little more in the front end, but then as we look towards 2032 at the end of the study, it does flip and is cheaper by about $30. I do have the information. I think that would be helpful for these for everyone on the board. For the residential user on here, if you just had your standard increase next year, it would be $196 bi-monthly. So it's about a $6 bi-monthly increase.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that for 2025 now?
So for 20, I'll just, do you mind if I approach and hand it out?
No, not at all.
I do have, sorry. This is the yearly comparison.
Thank you.
So this is the yearly comparison of baseline. What we call baseline, is what your 3% that you've been proposing. So next year it's a $6 increase above what you would have been at. So this is for frame of reference of where you would have been with the standard 3% with each option.
Got it.
And then a concern about scenario 2, since you said one of those major water users was Gardner Place, which is all the seniors. It sounds like they're all bundled together, and that they would all get this increased rate.
They're on one bill.
Is there a way to weed out the residential users that are conglomerated in that way, so that we're not?
That would be
doing that?
a policy and staff and board decision to. You would have to put a water meter on each individual unit. I assume they're units.
Right. Yeah.
So that you'd have to meter them all, or it would be a policy decision of charging them only at a certain rate.
Do we know if those residents pay a water bill to live there, or does the?
Or if it's part of their,
It's just
their
included in there.
monthly rent.
Yeah.
They don't pay a separate water bill.
Probably the company. The company pays it.
Oh, so it wouldn't hit the actual senior in this scenario.
Well, I mean, they
They may increase their.
Rent increase.
Assessments or whatever.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't.
Go ahead.
Brandis?
For Gardner Place, they do apply for a refuse credit, which we apply to their water bills. So if we wanted to accommodate in some way, I guess there could be an adjustment made to the refuse rebate that we get.
Is that credit the same as any other resident would get as a senior? So it's an addition?
So they pay their refuse separately, them a discount based on what we would provide our residents. So whatever our residents pay, we give them a 25% discount on that senior rate.
Okay, okay.
So,
So,
sorry.
it's okay, you've got it right here.
So over the next 7 years, we're looking at roughly a 20% increase from where we are now, right?
Yeah, we're right around there. The
Just off people.
these sample bills, which I know Mr. President has asked about a couple times, we use your sample bills from scenario 1A and scenario 2. We show the 2024 rates as well as your projected 25 rates. All the communities presented produce and treat their own water. And the next slide, I really want to stress, is not inclusive of other communities' planned rates. Obviously, we're not doing rate studies for all the other communities that we're showing. So this is your next year rates versus their this year rates. So they could have planned increases, they could have
Right.
projects. There's so much that goes into that, as you all know, hearing tonight. We can't show that because we don't know. So currently, right now, East Dundee sits right in the middle of the pack. With scenario 2 and 1A, you would jump up a couple spots. But as I mentioned, I want to continue to stress that is, you jump over 2 communities, and it is unknown of their projected rate increases for next year.
So you mentioned that the larger communities, they can do this much less expensive because it's the water treatment centers mainly dispersed among more homes. They have the same infrastructure pipes going to homes, so it's more like, are there any ways that we can share with, say, a Carpentersville and just start buying water from them and not maintaining a water treatment plant and wells? Is there any way to work with other communities so that we're not rebuilding an entire system when we don't need to?
So the short answer, and Phil or Greg, stop me at any point, you still have to maintain your distribution system. So the water mains, the lead service lines, all the major dollars are still needed. Even if you were to, hypothetically, not saying it's going to happen, I don't want to be quoted in the front page of the paper tomorrow, if you were to start buying water from someone else, you would still have to main your wells as a backup water supply. So communities that are on Lake Michigan still have a backup water supply. Because if for some reason the person you were buying it from, they couldn't give you water, you got to give your residents water. So you still have to maintain all the same infrastructure, unfortunately. The water towers, the wells, the mains. Now you're just adding the purchased water cost on top of it.
Well, and we don't have the infrastructure put in line to go
To
ahead
get
and
it.
purchase.
Yeah.
So we might as well start tapping in off of Lake Michigan or the town ahead of us for all that's gonna do us. What I would wonder, and to Andy's point, is the idea of eliminating the wastewater treatment entirely. We used to flush the Forward, down to Forward years ago. So does West Dundee. And we forced into them, because we built the plant that we did, the agreement was that they were gonna come under the river and give to us, and we would treat it. That really didn't pan out as well. I mean, and now we've got added expenses of sludge removal where we used to get $5,000 a year paid to us to get rid of it. Now we're paying $60,000 a year to get rid of it. There's $125,000, maybe $135,000 for a head count to run that plant every year on top of that. So now we're at $200,000. In addition, we're constantly replacing those bladders in those subterfuge bladders. And this is a conversation we can have offline too, but I would wonder if there's been any looking at 86 in that plant altogether. Because we never used to have it, and what did we do before we built it? And it was built 20 years ago. And we
plant's
could,
been here, it was expanded just under 20 years ago. But it's been around, gosh, how long have we been planning?
Well, the possibility remains at any point down the road, policy decision for the board, if we want to continue to maintain the wastewater treatment plant or hand it over to Forward and have them be the operational partner and we just pay them to maintain and operate it. But right now, we have West Dundee subsidizing the plant for us by giving us the 500,000 gallons a month that they send over to us. So, and also when we're looking at this, there's no projected sewer rate increase for the entire next 8 years. So that's, there's really, the issue is we have aging water infrastructure that I would suggest has been underinvested in over the last 20 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe even 30 to 40 years. And unfortunately, it's falling on us today. But we also had a discussion about lead service lines, and we said, we can ask residents to pay half, or we can fund it all. We've decided to fund it all, and that's going to come out in this. And that's perfectly reasonable. If we end up getting some additional grants for lead service lines, we can mitigate some of these rate increases by putting some of that money towards it. But right now, we don't have any grants, so we have to plan based on what reality is. If for some, a couple of years down the road, we decide we have extra cash and we want to put it towards this, we can also smooth out some of these rate increases. But for now, we're even with the projects that have been planned, the projects that have been planned are like based on what we have the capacity to achieve. I would still say I would like to be more aggressive in making additional improvements like you've outlined to increase the visual quality of the water, but we just don't have the capacity staff-wise to do anything more. And even what we are planning is, I think, really aggressive. But since the day I got here, Phil and I have had lengthy conversations about how important it is to continue to invest, and I've been aggressive about helping him, having him help me continue to educate people on why it's important to invest for the long term. Water is the bread and butter of life. This is what we do as government. A lot of our other stuff is really nice to do. This is what's really need to do. So it's, again, falls on your shoulders as the policymakers here to decide if we're going to have a self-funded system that adequately meets the needs of the future, or if we're going to subsidize it in some way with other funds. At this point in time, I don't have other funds to suggest that we subsidize it with, but we could always come up with other ideas. But for now, I think, again, this is not an easy pill to swallow, but it is a pill that we are going to have to swallow one way or another.
Personally, I don't think subsidizing the water fund from others is a good way to go either. I mean, all that does is kick the can down the road, and we got to pay those funds back. So if we go ahead and take money out of the general and give it to the water fund to ease the pain today, we're going to have to pay it back tomorrow, and that's going to be just as painful. So there's no point in getting into that habit, because it makes a whole lot of work for staff to maintain all that and keep track of it all, and ultimately you get no benefit from it. So, but.
And part of this past 3% increase that we've been working on was so that it would be fully sustained. The funds would, and it wouldn't be. I remember back when the general fund was subsidizing the water
Streets
needs.
too, if I remember.
Yeah,
And-
probably, but
But I'm still, I mean, and I don't want to harp on it, but I know years ago we had, and I want to say this is probably, Kathleen, you might remember it, when we had Trotter come in and do a study for us. I think it was a 20-year out, so it was around 2012, maybe 2013, to get to what we're talking about now, getting self-sufficient usage, supporting the fund. And 2033 was the date, simply because they took 20 years as the guideline to get to. Now we're closer to that. What I'm wondering is that the date you chose for your guys' study for Baxter Woodman to go to, because that's where we were concentrating before? And if not, then what's the magic of 2032?
So, holistically, throughout all of our rate studies, we do 8-year rate studies.
Okay.
10 gets a little too far out there. You can't be as accurate, but we understand that most capital plans are 5 years, and then you want to know how do you get past those couple years. We don't, when you say 15, 20, 25-year rate studies, and it's just, at that point, it's like you look at the hurricane tract. You're really good at the hurricane right here, but then you get like this.
I don't think it really provided good value then, the idea of a 20-year study didn't make a whole lot of sense to me then, but I was
Yeah.
a very small voice.
A 3-year, like a 3 to 4 year rate study, you're not getting through your 5-year capital plan. You're not getting through that first phase of projects. So we want to get through that first phase of projects and then move on and see where we're at.
Okay. So can I ask, Joe, you might understand or know about this. In our neighborhood, we've got those French drains. Is any of the capital improvement for, that we're concentrating on, talking about replacing any of those lines? No.
This is water and sanitary.
Right, okay, it's,
So looking at your commercial comparisons, this is for 150,000 gallon user with 2-inch meter. You stay in the same spot. There is one higher, but you guys stay in the same spot, so there's not a huge jump.
see, we're only just less expensive in these scenarios than Algonquin, and they've got 15 times the size of, population, and probably 25 times the size of the commercial base, so they can really spread that against.
So that kind of shows that even though they are that large, they do have higher rates because they, even though they could, like you mentioned, spread it across that user base and those businesses, they obviously have set very high rates as well for commercial.
So we need to keep in mind, guys, that for future growth on a commercial, basis, this is going to be a significant criteria for someone to decide on hanging a sign in East Dundee in the future.
Necessarily, we're staying in the same place. We're staying in comparison with everybody else.
No, I realize, but there's 8 communities that are doing better than us, so I'm just saying that we need to
I
keep it in mind. 9 communities.
I don't know. I don't know if, new businesses coming to the area are like focusing everything on what our water rates are.
It's just
It's a small, built-in, already established expense that they're gonna have to pay no matter what. And in fact, I think the bigger thing would be, depending upon what kind of business you have, it would be the water quality. But we also had that fish place over in that one, so people figure out how to get the quality. APET, yeah, they supply all of the pet stores with all their fish. They've got huge tanks.
Oh, gotcha.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So just summary conclusion, obviously we want to look at the revenue requirements while balancing the impact across your customers. Due to the amount of projects and capital, we do suggest you look at this every year, whether it be internally or having us do a quick refresh, but always aim small, miss small, make small adjustments year after year if some of the projects come in higher or lower. Rate increase will be necessary effective January 2025, like you said. And then just select a preferred scenario and direct staff to bring back an ordinance for adoption would be the action, but I know Phil just mentioned that with the budget conversations tonight, I'm sure there'll be some more conversations on this as well. So with that, I am complete, and hopefully I meet some time frame of someone. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, Phil has my contact, and feel free. We will follow up with any questions or anything you guys may have.
So to that point, as we take and we decide and we adopt what the rates will be, whatever they end up being, the increase. Right now, there's an ordinance that says we're increasing 3% every year through year XYZ. Then this would become a part of it, but that's all something that, depending upon future happenstance, we can always adjust and change. Absolutely. According to the fortunes or misfortunes of the village and the system. Yes, okay.
But government rarely does that. That's the problem.
So baseline is where we are right now.
Baseline is your current 3% increase that you have on the books, yes.
Okay. And that doesn't get us where we need to be by 2032 as far
It
as
doesn't.
capital improvements.
2027, I believe, is the year.
2027.
2027 is the year that you would not be able to fully fund anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Lot to
Thank you.
take in. Lot to chew on. So, let's see. Hey, can I ask you, Phil, the rehab on well number 6?
Yes.
That's a shallow well, right? Or no, that's the deep one, the deep one. What is the rehab necessary that we would have to do this, and we've only had it for 10 years? I mean, it's not the lining, is it? It better not be.
So, as you may recall, was it 3 years ago or 2 years ago? Well, probably 3 years ago, well, 5, malfunction. So we had a well contractor come in, pull the entire well out of the well itself, out of the ground, and evaluate it. And then it ended up being $150,000-ish.
Somewhere in there.
Okay.
So,
Which required a new motor and multiple components of the actual well pump portion itself.
But that's all above ground. That's just
No,
maintenance, right? We actually pulled the,
pulled everything all
All the
300
way.
feet.
God.
And so this cost anticipates that for well 6.
These are new lines, man.
Pardon?
These are new wells. I don't understand why we'd have to tear this apart to this extent. I don't get it.
It runs daily, it runs.
I mean, is that, I mean, maybe I'm just not informed, but is that standard operating
So
procedure?
this had to be my specialty, so I'll tell these guys out. So the industry standard is once a well starts producing less than 75% of its full day 1 gallonage, you'll never get it back to 100%. So you put a well on a rehab plan, and so the way wells work is that there's cracks in the aquifer and there's cracks going out into the aquifer. There's obviously iron in the water, and that iron will start building on the cracks, and the cracks and fissures that once may have been 2 foot thick are down to 6 inches. So we use a combination of acid and pressure to push the acid out into the fissures into the aquifer to clean all that buildup to make those fissures back to the size that they started as. And it's really to rehab the well. So the last thing that you want to have happen is that well that was doing 1,000 gallons a minute gets down to 400, and you can never get it back to 1,000 gallons a minute. You have to drill another well. So a good rehab plan, these guys are right on pace for a deep well, 10 to 15 years. A well should be pulled, rehabbed, motor should be looked at, and then it should be acid treated and acid pressure treated.
So if you're gonna increase that fissure from 6 inches to 2 feet, the sediment's gonna go down. Where's it, I mean,
So the funny thing is,
we're gonna bring it back up,
yeah.
and it's gonna
No, you dump it out of the
havoc
ground.
on our pumps.
No. So you pull the pump out of the ground. Pump goes out of the ground, hole all the way down, and they basically take, lack of a better term, it's a straw with a flapper on the bottom. They send it down and they grab all the sediment, they bring it up and put it on the ground, and they put it in buckets, and it goes away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually very. My nerdiness is coming out. Sorry.
No, so that essentially is the rehab.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a full rehab on the aquifer.
Okay.
We call it a well rehab, but you're really rebuilding the aquifer and everything like that.
Thank you.
Recharge.
Recharge it.
All right.
Thanks
you.
for that
Thank you.
information on that.
Yeah. We have an engineering degree to get through some of this stuff. Okay. Well, that was a lot to digest, so we're gonna have to keep the communication going up on this one. So this will take us then to item B, which is a discussion for the proposed current year 2025 budget, provide direction to staff on budget allocation in addition to staffing levels and salary increases. So this is just operations. So Brandis, the floor is yours.
Just, you know what, just go back to that. You can just hit arrow down.
All right. I cannot see, so.
Is this PowerPoint?
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
All right, I'll try to be efficient. First, I wanted to know if you all had any questions about the memo that was attached to the budget and the new initiative forms.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, are you saying, do we have questions about the specific items that are on the list of things we're going to do, or?
Well, I'll discuss those, but some of the memo kind of discussed where we expect to be end of '24. If you have no questions about that, I'll just go ahead and straight into '25.
Thank you.
All right. So this is our agenda for this discussion. We'll hit on just an overall budget summary, and then we'll get straight into the general fund, capital funds. It's like I don't have a slide on TIFs or BDDs, but I do have one comment, and then I'll hit on the water sewer fund. So as an overview, you'll see that we have steadily increased our cumulative cash, and this is for our overall budget. And you'll see in '25 that we are anticipating to use or be under budget by about $4 million, and we'll talk about that as we get into some of our projects. So far, we have accumulated nearly $30 million of bond debt. And this is just for our general obligation bonds, which is tied to our general fund if we were not able to sustain it through other resources. Since our accumulation of this debt, we are currently at $11 million. Estimated end of year for '25 is where we'll be at for how much we would owe.
that includes the garage, correct?
Includes the garage, yes. We did pay off the 2015 bond this year as the maturity date, so that was our last payment. That was $910,000. And then we did, as you see, the last line item there is the 2024 bond for the downtown parking garage.
So essentially, I mean, we've done pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, if at one time we were at nearly $30 million worth of long-term bonds, long-term debt, and now we're a third of that, roughly, and we've added for the garage, we've done real well.
So we do have 2 IEPA loans. One is fully funded by West Dundee. As you can see, it's the 2005 bond. And then we have our note that we pay annually to the Fire Protection District for the acquisition of this building.
When does that end? We've been paying them $100,000 since I can't even tell you
It's
how long.
2033, it says right there.
2033, yes.
Jeez, they ought to just write that off and do us a favor. Can I ask, as far as
Sure.
the Illinois EPA loans, is that our main or only source of revenue for water and sewer when we need to borrow out or bond out for projects? I mean, is that that's where we go? Is usually the cheapest source of money?
I'll just say, I think like they said, that's gonna be your best interest rate option.
All right, just thank you.
So in the next 3 or so years, we will have 3 more bonds coming off. So we will have fully paid off another 3 bonds by 2028, I believe. Our budget is zero-based for our general fund, and you'll see that our general fund is balanced, and we do have a surplus, which I forgot to write in there, sorry. It is a surplus of $113,000 for
Money.
'25.
It's a surplus of money.
Of money, yes.
It is more than $5.
Yes. And this is after we have committed to fully fund our police pension contributions, which I'll get into later. Any of our cash reserves will be used to help support underperforming TIFs, and will also be used to fund any of our major capital projects.
So the surplus is the result of us bringing up to the level that Lauterbach tells us we need to pay for the police department?
Yes, so
That pension?
I'll show you later that, well, not later.
Okay.
When we talk about our tax levy, you'll see, and maybe in 2 meetings or so, you'll see that we have increased from about 50% funded to 56% funded over the last 2 years. So we have been doing pretty well, especially with our investments, getting over the $10 million cap for our small municipality. We're able to invest in different types of funds, which has also helped, increase or decrease our liability for our police pension, which is still high, but
Because we were like 400 a year short,
Yes,
something like that.
correct.
And this accounts for that?
over the last 3 or so years, we have been committed to fully funding and meeting the Lauterbach contribution amount.
And not to get off on it, but are we still going to be held to the 2040 date? For
As far as
90%,
we
or are
know,
they
yes.
consolidating?
That
now?
has not changed.
They haven't said anything yet?
It hasn't changed.
Okay.
Even if it does change, I wouldn't recommend pushing it out any further.
Yeah.
I think that, a dollar put away today is worth $10 tomorrow. Save the dollar today,
Yeah.
and also Brandis mentioned this, but we should all give a round of applause because for the first time in a while, for as long as I can remember, we are budgeting 2025 to fully fund the police pension at its full amount. So what we've done in the 3 years past is that we have put in the lesser amount, and then if we had money at the end of the year, we made the extra payment, which great, we made the extra payment, but now we're saying going forward, we're going to budget it at the start and just know that we're going to do it. And part of the reason that we're able to do that is because the Prairie Lakes TIF came offline and is now going to be giving us a lot of money to put towards the pension, in addition to we're just paying down debt, having more general fund available to fund that pension payment.
So, are we saying that it's fully funded by an increased tax levy on our property taxes? Is that what we're saying?
So it's being
Or
fully
is it-
funded because we're using a larger portion of the general fund
Okay.
to fund it. But there is.
But it's budgeted rather than contingency, kind of.
Right.
Gotcha.
But also, it's an
Of
and,
course.
because the property tax levy is covering a larger portion of it in '25 because we're capturing all of that increment from Prairie Lakes.
So if that increase came off of the general fund, were there any noteworthy items that we had to forego to get there?
No.
No.
No? So is it fair to say that yet last year and the year before, we were sitting on a surplus equal to the amount of the shortfall of the pension fund?
Well, we did fully fund it the last 2 years.
Well, I thought Lauterbach told us we were putting in, what, 790 or something like that, 793 something? And then they
And
wanted 1.1. They
Yes,
told us
so
1.1.
we did fund, I can't remember 23's year, but this year we fully funded 1.2 million for the
1.1,
contribution.
Wow.
So to answer your question, yes, you could call it a surplus, but I wouldn't call it a surplus. I would say it would have been better if we had just budgeted for the entire thing, but we were being conservative and making sure that we.
Balance the budget.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
So we'll get into some of our commitments to our TIFs and BDDs, which are all primarily our debt service payments that we have committed to those individual TIFs, which is our next line. We do have $6 million worth of budgeted initiatives included in the budget that you received, new projects and new initiatives. And then we are anticipating deferring another $3 million worth of projects. We do fully intend to fund the police pension contribution, which I mentioned, and I just got that number after I submitted all of this to you all. So I'll be able to tell you what that number is. It's not much further off than what we just paid for this year. And of course, we have $100,000 in contingency, $50,000 in our general fund, and $50,000 in our water sewer fund. So overall, you'll see that our budgeted revenues for all funds, you see 45% of our revenues come from our general fund, and I'll get into what that breakdown is later. And then our next largest comes from our TIF funds, which is all property tax revenue that we receive through Kane or Cook County. And then our third largest is our water sewer fund. Our expenditures are a little bit more evenly broken out, with 35% coming from our general fund, 26% from water sewer, and then other sources include our TIF, VDD, and our debt service funds.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What was that little baby street and bridge fund?
Yes, so we do get money from Kane County for streets and bridges. I can't figure out their calculation for it, but it's about $50,000 a year.
Okay.
So it's not much.
Which is
Baby.
enough to do about
Baby.
150 feet of road.
Yes. And we do try to accumulate that money and just, or no, we actually spend it on, we spend that money on utilities, so street lights, comment payments, things like that.
Okay.
So we're in our general fund revenues, and you'll see that our combined sales tax is about 51% of our total general fund revenues that we receive. And we get 11% from our property taxes, which, as you know, is 100% committed to our police pension contribution. And then the rest is broken out by miscellaneous other things like our utility taxes, permit fees, fines and forfeiture, things like that. Any questions on revenues?
Yeah, quickly, what is the brown slice that's between fines and forfeitures and real estate? What does that represent?
That brown slice is the fine, charges for services.
No, I mean, just to the right, or I'm
It
sorry,
looks
to the left
like
of.
the line from fines.
Oh, yes,
and-
it's just off a little bit.
Yeah.
The fines and
It's
forfeitures.
supposed to be over to the right.
Yes.
So
label.
fines and forfeitures, that,
No, the big chunk.
yeah.
So you've got fines and forfeitures, real estate taxes. There's a chunk in the middle that looks like it's unlabeled.
Right.
Oh,
That's
that's,
what we're talking
sorry.
I'm just, because it, I mean, it says
Oh, you
fines
know
and
what, it's
forfeitures are 2%.
other revenues, which is
Other.
like, it's
Oh.
10%, I can see it on my form. It's 10%, and then the other one that you can't see is like red next to the blue one.
Mm-hmm.
That's state income tax, so that's the LGDF. I always forget that. And that is 6%. So the other revenues is like if we sell assets or if we receive investment income from our banking institutions. That's what that's made of.
That distributive fund money that we get it from the state as part of our share of the sale, income tax,
Yes.
are they, how good are they in distributing that? I mean, do we?
No,
gotta
they're
pay for
good.
it?
Every month we get it.
We get it, okay.
Yes. And it is
Because-
expected to increase next year.
It's like, it's gonna go up, what, 0.8%?
I don't know the percentage exactly, but it's going up to 175 per capita. So for each resident that we have, that's how much it is. And it was way less than that before.
It was what before?
I don't have the exact amount right now, but it was much less than a 175.
Much less.
Yes.
Well, we've been, the Metro West Council of Government's been fighting for it forever, and it's always a big issue for them. And we had Springfield on the hook,
Mm-hmm.
we thought, and they gave everybody 0.8%, so 0.8% as an increase. And we were asking for 10%.
Hmm.
So, we, the thing that is that it should be our money. And that's why I'm wondering how,
Yeah, they pay out frequently.
forthcoming the state isn't even paying for it because, they never were. So,
We do get it monthly. So
okay.
never any issues with it. unless they overpay.
It's gotta be because Madigan's not around anymore.
And this is a breakdown per category of what our revenues look like over a period of time. And as you can see, our sales tax revenue has increased significantly over time, which is why you see big jumps there. And when we get large permits for new constructions, things like that, that also increases our revenue, which we didn't have in this year, but we do anticipate having a couple larger projects next year. And then, we incorporated the new streaming and truck parking tax in '23, which has been a big help to our general fund. We did also receive large or higher than normal interest rate returns from our banking institutions, which I anticipate will decrease over the next year or so as interest rates have decreased.
Is that the decrease in other revenues?
Yes. So our expenditures in our general fund are primarily based on our personnel. As you can see, it's 71% of our cost. And then our next larger categories are contractual services, which is our labor attorneys, engineering, things like that. And then charges for services, that's like our risk insurance that we pay annually, which you guys just approved that contract renewal. And also banking fees. So we absorb the fees that our residents pay to pay their utility bills online, and some of that cost is in our general fund, and then the other percentages are within our water sewer fund. And then this is a breakdown per department of how our expenditures are weighed. So you see police is 62% of our general fund budget. Next is a split between our administration and public works department at 13%. And then us little people are broken out the rest of the way.
So, if I'm reading, so where it says personnel 71%, that is the breakdown of that 71%?
This is just the distribution by department is just their department based on the total of our budget for expenses. So it's not that.
It's not just personnel, it's
Yes,
like
it's all
car
of the
leases and
operating costs.
everything else.
So refuse, that's Flood Brothers?
Flood Brothers, any cost that we have to pay for printing bills or any online services that are related to refuse. So our general fund total expenditures are 8.4 million, close to 8.5, and that is a 17% increase or 1.28 million higher than 24. And that is inclusive of a potential 3% COLA increase for our union, hopefully non-union employees, if we can get our contract approved in time with Public Works, and a 2% merit increase. Our union contract usually increases an additional 3% for step increases in between the COLAs, so that's also factored in. We do have new positions budgeted, which I'll get into once I get into each department's budget. And then we did have a pretty large increase for our risk insurance. We do not have the full cost for our regular insurance, but I did budget that at a 10% increase.
So that's state control, right? IMF, the
IMRF,
risk
yes.
management, and so is the increase that we found in our premium, is it isolated to activity within East Dundee, or is it across the board?
Yes, it's only for
increase?
East Dundee, and that was a 9% increase, I believe.
So, okay, so if we're gonna continue to tap into our insurance, obviously the premiums are gonna go up, but this increase isn't due to, like, across the board, every municipality, is it?
No, so so we do have our risk insurance, which is different, which is what I meant by insurance. So we did have our risk insurance increase. I believe it was close to 18 or 20%. But IMRF is our pension for our non-police employees, and that did increase by 9%. And it's only based on East Dundee's performance.
Gotcha.
And then, as stated before, we do have a full the full contribution for the police pension included in this budget. So for administration, we do have the inclusion of a management analyst position, which is split 50% in administration, 25% in public works, and then 25% in water sewer. And then we do have, based on our new initiative forms that you all have copies of, a new depot computer and copier, and then community engagement software. I don't know if you guys have any questions about that, but Franco could speak more to it, and that's a 2-year contract.
Is the community engagement software the kind of notification?
No, that would be separate. This is something trustee wanted to see on here for open data, and in this respect, it mainly be for the police statistics,
Okay.
to incorporate their statistics in real time on our website for transparency.
Oh, okay, okay.
For police, we do have a new officer budgeted, which will get us to our fully staffed, full-time department. And at some point, we do plan to phase out our part-time employees, but we only have like two or three left. So it's not that many, but this does get us to the number that we need to be fully full-time. And then this is a mass notification system, a 3-year contract, and this is more, I think, of what Trustee Mahoney was speaking to. One of the new initiatives was for new tasers. Our tasers are out of warranty, and this would be a 5-year contract at that same cost annually to have new tasers for all of our police officers.
Trustee Mahoney's point, Everbridge is the mass notifications.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, Chief's been working with the 911 consortium. Yes. And really trying to press them to purchase this software for all member communities so that we could share in the cost and it would be cheaper. They haven't committed to that yet, so if you all want to call your friends in the neighboring jurisdictions and push that, we would love that. So this cost is just for us. And we have built in with this cost a caveat to the contract that if Quadcom does adopt it, that we would then not have to pay this. We would pay our Quadcom share and not the full cost of the system. But the cost would be cheaper if all member communities at Quadcom would adopt this. And I don't know why they wouldn't, because it's a great system. Not everybody's on board yet. It was half, like less than half, 2,500-ish or something like that.
And that would come with all of those things listed. Cameras, body cameras, in-car radios, docking stations.
Oh, no, that's a separate item.
Right, so.
This is just for the Everbridge.
Just for Everbridge.
The 4,500.
Oh, I see. So it's the notification system.
Yes.
I see.
Next, we got a request for, I think, a leg curl machine, I don't know, in the exercise equipment room. And then we are including in our general fund budget all of the maintenance agreements because those are going to be more routine versus capital. Mm-hmm. So you'll see that transition into our general fund budget versus in our capital.
So when it comes to the tasers, we're going to spend $12,000 on a 5-year contract. We're doing that because the current crop of tasers that we have are out of warranty, but do they still work?
That would be a question for your police department. Not quite sure. I believe that they do, and this is maybe a just in case scenario.
Because I'm wondering if we could just get an extended warranty program and not have to get new equipment.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far out of warranty they are.
There are, listed in the packet, there's a lot of benefits to the new system. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with the complete phase out. I don't know without talking to Chief, but it does appear that a lot of, that the new ones, let me rephrase. It does appear that our old ones were vastly outdated.
Yes, they
compared
are.
to modern technology.
They are. I mean, and the thing is too is, Chief will tell you this, it's an officer safety issue. And if we're using tasers that are out of date, if anything were to happen or malfunction and somebody were to get hurt, it would expose us to a very big liability.
So if that's the case, I think it's fair to say there's no salvage value in what we have.
Probably not. So moving on to Public Works, we do have that same management analyst position. You see the cost for that position there. And in attempting to, what do you call it? Forward plan?
Look ahead.
Yes. To ensure that we have continuity of services, we are interested in or leaning more toward a water or wastewater sewer or wastewater operator because the two individuals that hold those positions are at retirement age.
Succession planning.
Yes, thank you. So in attempts to plan for succession, we would like to secure or at least advertise and hire either a water operator or a wastewater operator, and we will talk internally about which position is more valuable, but we are leaning probably more toward a water operator.
This is, this is the guy we have under contract.
I'm sorry.
The
Wastewater's contract. And then we did talk last year about a GIS system, which was significantly more than this amount. The total cost is $42,000, but we will split the cost between our general fund and then water sewer fund. And this will be by Baxter Woodman.
Yes.
Okay, so they will develop and help maintain this system just for East Dundee. It will be specific for us, and then we can add on other departments based on their needs at any time.
And sorry, and who maintains it?
Baxter and Woodman.
Okay, so can't we get GIS services from the county without having to
They would not
appropriate
maintain
money for
our
it?
mapping systems. So we can get some of the data from King County, but they're not gonna maintain develop maps for us. So there are options to do it, other consultants and so on and so forth, but as far as map development, King County wouldn't.
Well, and given that, okay, there's still some growth opportunity in East Dundee, I get that. But since we are as small as we are and growth is limited, doesn't it tend to weaken the value of GIS over time? Because our systems underground aren't gonna change. So once we have a map, then we know what's under there. We don't need to continue. I mean, this system here, we're gonna end up probably updating it based on software through Baxter Woodman in 3 to 5 years. And so we'll be doing this again in 3 years, giving them another $21,000. What I'm wondering is, you know, given the size of the town and what we have, why don't we just do it once and do away with it?
That's essentially what we're doing. So Baxter Woodman has already started through other agreements, developing our water distribution system. So mains, hydrants, valves. So that, in fact, they're mapping our lead service line. You've seen the lead service line map online. So GIS development is essentially underway. So we're going to also have them map our sewer system, sanitary sewer, storm sewer system, zoning maps. So all of our EDD maps, TIF maps, all of our maps will be layered in the GIS system. And since they've essentially already started that for us, it makes the most sense to continue with them as we continue to add more mapping options.
Okay. And do we share any of that information with the county then, so they can update their system?
If they're interested in our
We
map,
could.
there's absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Well, and some of the information that they have are sharing with us as we develop ours. So we'll be able to incorporate some of their parcel mapping and tax assessors information. So all of that can be over time integrated into GIS.
Okay.
So what what you're saying is that this amount, the 42,000, is mostly building all these maps. Beyond that, we might only have to do limited contracts now and then if we want to make a new map or something like that.
Correct. It's more or less time and material.
Yeah.
Or essentially their time, their hourly rate to develop maps for us. But here, hopefully in the near future, most of our maps will be in GIS.
Nice.
And what's nice, for example, on the water distribution side, so much information can be, at some point, this is looking forward probably 2 or 3 years, for our water distribution system. If you click on hydrant, we can attach photographs of it, the hydrant type, how many turns to turn it on and off. I mean, there's so much attribute information that can be associated with each a water main segment, a hydrant, a valve, and so on and so forth. Possibilities are truly endless. And once we get to that point, it'll be exciting to share with you all what that system will look like. It truly is extraordinary.
Can I
In
ask?
terms of how we'll use it. I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to let you finish. I think I remember from IML there were a bunch of uses for residents to be able to utilize the GIS maps as well to report issues and more accurately say like, hey, I came across a light that's out, or there's a leak here, or whatever, just be able to give better reporting than what we currently have, so.
No question.
Okay.
And then once we get this map in place, they're building it, but then it sounds like our staff can maintain and put in more data once we have the framework in place.
I think as far as us entering data, it might be on a limited basis because it does require a level of expertise and perhaps we develop that expertise over time, but the actual data entry and is possible certainly, but
Might
for
be
right-
somebody doing some training to kind of be
Yes.
that person who's our specialist.
So Joe, are you able to access this information then from the village or the county? But you'd be able to get it for maintaining this, and would you have to go to Baxter Woodman to get it, or can he come to East Dundee?
Yeah, it would be ours.
Be on the website, basically.
Some of the information would be publicly viewable, but some of the information we would not necessarily have a need to, we wouldn't necessarily want the public to see the
Water main location.
Yeah.
the details of our
Yeah,
water.
I mean, just from a
distribution.
security standpoint, I can't imagine that's a good idea.
Exactly.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
but
But
need to retain that.
on the public level, our zoning map, our BDD and TIP maps, police department can get into crime data, accident data, any information that we want to make public. Truly, the possibilities are endless.
Okay. Oh, cool.
All right, and finally, just village-wide, we'll continue our computer and software replacement schedule in coordination with our IT consultants. For our community events, we have our list of events and also breakdown with the total event budget of $157,000. Get right into our MFT fund. So this year, we do plan to draw down fund balance to fund some street improvements. We do have until 2025 to designate what we use cash for, right, for the renewal program through the state, through MFT.
Say that one more time.
The
sorry.
MFT program, we have to designate what we're going to use funding for by 2025.
Oh, that's the RBI?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So the state initially gave us a few or incremental distributions for additional MFT funding, and we have until 2025 to designate what we use the money for and to pretty much have a contract in place so we are going to designate those funding for the projects that you see on the screen, and that's a total of $624,000. It also includes all of the engineering, construction engineering, pavement patching, curbs and sidewalks for designated areas.
For the uninitiated, like me, what is MFT and RBI?
MFT is motor fuel tax. That's what we get from the state every month.
Great.
RBI is the Rebuild Illinois Fund.
Thank you.
I'm very curious, Phil, the second street between Fox River and North Corporate Limit, that's where we have the asphalt over the curb. Are we gonna fix that even, or is this just to simply add on to that
Full
problem?
reconstruct, so all curb comes out,
Wow.
full base, everything.
That's amazing.
Full-blown reconstruct.
That's awesome.
So the idea then is to ideally replace as many lead surfaces as we can ahead of that project.
I was just about to ask that question, because some of these are lead service streets, so.
And then Barrington Avenue, what's the extent of that? Is that just resurface, or is that's not a rebuild, is it?
That's a resurfacing essentially between Van Buren and 68, and that's a project that'll, we're using federal surface transportation program funds for that project.
Yeah, since it's an artery, we can get
Correct.
other types of grants for that. We did about 30 years ago, we got that.
And
it's a
we're
big
also
chunk.
seeking to adjust any lead surfaces essentially beneath the roadway on that street.
So it's not gonna be built to accommodate higher weights, is it?
No, it will be constructed essentially in kind.
Just, okay.
Okay, so I don't have a slide on this, but we did get a request to increase the Arts Council budget from $40,000, which is budgeted in 2024, to $60,000. So that change has not been added to the budget, but we got that request recently. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now we'll get into our capital projects. Start with our general beautifications. We do intend to redo or fabricate and install entryway signage and gateway signage, and we have that budgeted at about $100,000. And that is a few-year project, so I think it's about 3 to 4 years over time. Mockingbird has 2 projects associated with it, and that's to make some right-of-way improvements and to also install a street light. We do hope to start a 2-year project of burying lines, utility lines on Barrington Avenue. And then we get to our facility improvements. Most of that is related to Village Hall and the parking lot expansion, which is talked about in greater detail in your new initiative form. There is a project for our police garage, and also the replacement of the salt barn roof. For streets, we do anticipate a rating study for our road conditions. Hope to be able to complete a bicycle and pedestrian plan, and also evaluate the Illinois 72 at River and Van Buren intersection. So those are some major projects there.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
that? The road quality survey, I mean, as somebody that knows nothing about road construction, it seems like we could drive around and see which roads are in bad quality. What are we getting for $30,000 beyond that?
Good question.
So what we're planning to do is have a consultant evaluate all the roads and have a map, the condition ratings in GIS. And what we'll do from that is then prioritize a replacement schedule in the coming 5 to 10 years.
I mean, I thought we already do that, like, just internally.
We've, in recent years, developed a street improvement program going after the worst streets in the community, taking other factors into consideration, such as like service line replacements and so on. So
And
going,
have we been paying for that, or have we been doing that internally?
it's been a contractual.
Oh, really?
Hines and Associates has conducted recent road condition surveys for us, showing the staff.
And this would include the mapping of the widths of all the streets as well for those kind of
We can
discussions?
include that in the survey, yes. So the idea is to, with this survey next year, is we're gonna map as much information as we can, road width, road condition, and
Width.
utilize GIS to map all the details of that survey. And from that, build a capital replacement program for the streets in the coming years. And that'll be, of course, layered in GIS.
Yeah, I think that'll be really useful for the parking discussions too.
Yeah.
It's a nice added benefit.
So, can you run me through briefly the last two, bicycle and pedestrian plan, 80 grand? What is it we're looking to get out of that?
I think this is a critical project, similar to when we did the Riverfront Master Plan, because every grant that exists wants you to have some kind of plan that you can point to say, you've done community engagement, you've gotten input, you've evaluated the current situation, and here's what the recommended next steps are. And so if we spend $80,000, it could yield us hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants down the road. A lot of this would be for sidewalk improvements and other interconnectedness. So we have a bike path that runs through the village. It's amazing. It's an incredible asset. It's one of the things that puts us on the map and makes us special. But what we don't have is an interconnectedness with other communities around us other than that. So you can take the Fox River Trail north and south. That's about it. If you want to go east or west, where do you go? What do you do? How do you do it?
How do you do it safely?
We've got, provision in one of the redevelopment agreements with PAL to do a north-south through Rock Road, but we also want to connect that east-west along 68. And designing that, getting that to be a recommended next step will let us then apply for a lot of federal funding that's available for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. And the pedestrian plan, I think, critically important along 72, in tandem with the last one, which is the evaluation of those two intersections. If we want to get major federal funding to improve River Street in 72, we're going to have to prove in the pedestrian plan that that intersection is what we all know it is. It's terrible. So
Dangerous.
it all ties together to how people live and breathe and exist and do things in the community, whether they choose to walk or bike. But it also has a larger impact on the drivability too, because the roads are not just roads, there's also sidewalks attached to those roads, and how we move around in the community has never been studied to a degree that it needs to be.
And then the intersection with 72 and River, well,
So it's the two intersections, Illinois,
oh, both of them?
72 and River, and then 72 and Van Buren.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Is that information then, we're gonna be able to use that with any IDOT requests that we need for signal change if we need it? So what's the length of the expiration date, if you will, of any of the studies for like bicycle and pedestrian? It's not likely to change, so if we do this study, I mean, if we don't seek monies for, say, 5 years or whatever, is that information still gonna be good, or by the time we get to that, are we gonna have to redo it?
The plan should be good for at least 20 years, but you can update it periodically for cheaper. It's just that because we have nothing, it's going to be more expensive to start. But
Okay.
Next, we have equipment and vehicle purchases, a new vehicle for our building department, and then 2 vehicles, well, 1.5. One we've already committed to purchasing, which you see that cost for the international dump truck, and then the others for a Ford F-450. We will continue to pay on our Starcom radio lease, and that's another 3 years for $16.5. And then new construction and acquisition will complete the parking garage and also perhaps acquire a new property. And then there is a stormwater project for Summit Avenue. And that is all of the capital projects that I have listed. No questions?
No, but that Summit project is does it have anything to do with that underground spring that tends
No.
to be running? No, none of that.
It's, if you're at Barrington and Summit,
Yeah,
looking north, up the hill, so to speak,
right,
on the west side of the road,
right.
the ditch storm system has been eliminated for essentially, I think, 2 or 3 homes, so we're looking to restore that. And address stormwater that's affecting the homeowner and their property at the northwest corner of that intersection.
There's a pooling?
Yes,
Yes.
water, stormwater flows downhill and come around, and the way their driveway is configured, it's a little bit of a
Okay, so,
situation that needs to be addressed.
okay.
Okay, finally, I'll get into our water sewer fund. Again, you see the management analyst position of 25% that is allocated to water sewer. You also see the 50% of the wastewater or water operator position here. And also the 25 or 50% split for GIS services. As discussed earlier, there is an evaluation for wells 5 and 6 here. And then we are including the utility extension for south of Illinois 72 based on the pending agreement with the data center. And we have lead service line replacements at $500,000, and that is intended to draw down the water sewer reserve to start that process.
Wait, is that 2.7 in this budget? Is that what we're saying?
It is.
That's a lot less than I thought.
Well,
So, but I'll
it's over a
explain.
couple years.
I'll explain this a little bit more. So this is kind of a placeholder. We've been having a lot of conversations. There's a lot of easements that are going to be required in order to run this utility extension through ComEd right-of-way, through property the village doesn't own. All of those things could delay when we start this project. Also, the project in and of itself is about $5 million in total, so we split it in half and spread it over 2 years. Over the next month, we'll gather additional information that may push this to 25 and 26, or I'm sorry, 26 and 27 versus 25 and 26. But we are close to having refined engineering documents, which are being paid for not by us. So once we get those, we would be able to then put this project out to bid. But we wouldn't want to do that until we have all the easements in place, and those easements may take some time to get. So, but the general idea is that we would borrow money to fund this and then pay it back through the development agreement. So it would be
Okay, so that isn't in those rate increases?
correct.
quotes.
No.
Completely outside of it.
So the only other water and sewer, I mean, and I ask this almost every year, Joe, is phase 2 of that Lions Park project that we had at the corner of Howard and Went, it's on the Park District property. there was a second phase that was gonna go in there that we have year after year just, I don't know if we disregarded it or is it even still needed? Because I think we've really solved 90% of the flooding issues that were at that whole location. There were a lot of number of homes along Went that were, you know, underwater in heavy rains in the spring, but I don't know if anybody's been, you know,
Right, so that would
complaining
fall
about
under
it.
the sewer and water, but it's a storm sewer project,
Yeah,
and it's still out there. We're trying to get funding through FEMA to pay for the construction phase of that.
okay.
And we weren't able to get funding last year, not necessarily that we didn't qualify, it was because Kane County didn't have their emergency plan in place, and we need to have that in place and approved before they roll out granting to different municipalities. So that happened, I think we approved that a couple months ago, so we'll be going for grant application next year.
You know, I don't want to start, you know, spreading the pain or anything, but technically, when the water falls, it falls on Park District property. It affects surrounding homeowners as a result. Kane County law says you got to retain your water. And, I mean, wouldn't we be able to get, I mean, wouldn't the Park District be able to partner with us to get that done? And certainly be able to help fund it?
Well, the Park District is giving us the land to do the project, so they are kind of participating.
They're giving it to us or giving us access to it?
Access to it.
Right.
And use it. But, you know, they're also keeping that area green, so really it's the surrounding homes that have had an impervious area to the basic bathtub that had them all.
Yeah, but I can only recall one house being built over the last 20 years that, you know, would have maybe added to any of the problems, or, I mean, those homes have been there for 70, 60 years.
The storm sewer system is an infiltration system in that whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Over time, filtration decreases just because the gravel strata gets silted in and they're not as efficient.
Yeah.
The gravel.
Well, then as time goes on, that phase two is going to become more important, correct? So what do we do every year? Just keep asking FEMA for money that probably won't come? I mean, eventually we're going to have to deal with it, right?
Well, we got funding for phase 1 and 2, so I think we're higher on the list to get the funding because we've got a project in place. So.
Okay.
So can I
All right.
throw out there that maybe at some point we want to stop asking for grants and just pay for it?
Yeah, I
Like,
think,
it doesn't have to be right this second, it doesn't have to be for this budget, but I think at some point we need to take care of our residents on this one.
yeah, as Joe was describing, we are now better positioned to receive the funding since the last box was checked, so to speak.
Yep.
So if we don't get the funding this year, or in this next grant cycle, then I would recommend that we just fund it out of the subsequent year's budget.
Okay.
But I like our chances, so fingers
Yes.
crossed.
Now that King County has an emergency plan, like they needed to, okay.
Well, if we were to fund it ourselves over the next number of years, we could still seek funding beyond, you know, I mean, to retroactively address it, couldn't we? I mean, just because would it eliminate us if we were to go ahead and fix it? Does that take us out of the running?
Typically.
Yeah. Okay. Good thing to know. Keep in mind.
All right, last little bit of water, sewer. We have a capacity management, operations, and maintenance CMOM plan, and this is for our wastewater side of operations. Polymer system replacement, rebuild a centrifuge, replace a blower, sludge pump replacement, and also oxidation ditch repairs. Well, any other questions about water sewer? And then we'll get to our
That's all
cash.
wastewater treatment, right?
Everything there is wastewater.
Yeah.
All right, it's my last slide, guys. All right, we'll talk about our cash balance policy. I have no recommended changes for 2025. Essentially, we'll maintain a 35% reserve for our general fund and also a 35% reserve for our water sewer fund. We have well over that in both of our funds. We will also continue to make additional contributions to our police pension fund if we have additional surplus at the end of the year, and transfer any surplus after our police pension contribution into our capital improvement funds to help facilitate future projects.
Is this cash balance policy the reason that we got that large interest payment that you were talking about?
I'm sorry,
What's that?
can you repeat that?
You mentioned earlier that we got a larger than normal interest payment.
Oh, yes.
Is that because of this cash?
Because we do
policy?
have a lot of cash in our accounts, yes.
Okay.
And that's it for me. Any questions?
So if
Thank you.
there were a whole bunch of change requests in our packet
Yeah.
that weren't on here. Are those being shuffled or were they just not in the presentation?
It looks like some of these are in there. based on
Right,
this. Did I just miss the Bartles Park one?
Oh, yeah. So some of them I did not include. I just included the ones that we were more new to this year. So
Okay.
Barters Park, some of those are just repeated from last year that we didn't get to fund.
Okay, just making sure, because some of these are, like Bartles Park is a fairly significant 2025 expenditure and it wasn't on there, so.
So
Just checking.
big picture, this is where we sort of tie all of these loose ends together. We haven't yet talked about the tax levy, which we will talk about in 2 weeks. But kudos to Brandis and her staff for putting together a balanced budget yet again. It's very exciting that we continue to pay down debt, that we continue to conservatively budget, that we continue to watch our pennies and set ourselves up for a solid financial future. I know it's hard to swallow the water rate increases, but also that's a difficult story to tell, but at the same time, we're funding the needs of the community at a rate and a level that isn't requiring us to lay off staff or do like very drastic measures. Increase at a level that's not sustainable, yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good stories to tell here, and there's a lot of good work being done by this board. And I hope that you guys can see the solid footing that you're putting the village on to capitalize on your success and continue to have really robust years ahead. So sometimes, I'm sure you all remember before when it was much more difficult budget conversations, and we've gotten to this period of stability, and part of that is that the economy is still doing well. We're not in any kind of dire straits, but it's also like trying to be conservative about what we're doing, putting cash aside, making sure we're funding pensions. I keep thinking about how do we position ourselves best for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, instead of thinking about today. And that's, as staff, we're always thinking about what can we do to solidify and be stable so that we don't have to endure rocky terrain, and when bumps come up in the road, we can weather storms without having to, have the rug pulled out from under us. And as a small community, that's really hard to do because those bumps are not as easy to get over when you're small. So it's critically important to myself and to all of the staff to make sure that we're doing everything we can to put ourselves in a position to continue to be successful and to have that stability. And that stability is appreciated by us, and your support of these budgets in the past years and going forward is also appreciated. So next time we talk, we'll talk about the tax levy, we'll talk about some of these projects, which ones you may want to bump up, which ones you may want to push out, if there's any adjustments that you want to make to prioritize certain things over others. Everything we put forward is a recommendation. What we're looking for from you is decisions and direction on which way to go for all of this. But a lot of good legwork done by Brandis and the staff, so I appreciate all those efforts.
Yeah, thank you,
you.
Brandis.
I wanted to say something really quick so there's an understanding for the art council increased budget, because last year we talked about 50,000 for it and then took 10,000 and put it into the depot council. And so that would make up for that. But the awesome tree lighting that we do doubled from $5,000 to $10,000 that the Arts Council pays for this year. And then we just have a bunch of sculpture ideas along the Riverwalk. And black and white art show is going to be bigger in possibly 5 locations because it was packed in one. So we have bigger things planned. So that's the justification for that, just while you're thinking about it.
Thank you.
No problem.
My question.
Got you.
I also planted a seed with Brandis today about some other communities, when they want to fund larger art projects, when there are like major developments, they take a portion of that and set it aside. So like when Hager gets redeveloped, it's possible to take a portion of that sort of redevelopment generated revenue and set it aside for a larger sculpture or something that's going to cost more than your annual budget. So just something to think about for the bigger projects that come in, and whether or not there's an ability to earmark some of that for something more substantial.
Okay. Awesome.
Great.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandis.
Thanks, Brandis.
More to follow, that's for sure. So, okay, well, that'll take us to reports. I have none, so let's start with Sarah.
Oh, no report.
Kathleen.
No report.
Scott.
No report.
Trish.
We had the unveiling of the mural, and we had a photographer come the other day. What day was that? Saturday. Everything's blending. And there's awesome photos that I'll be sharing, or I have shared, or to everyone. It just went really well, and I'm really excited about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Andy.
No report.
Okay. Well, Anna. Phil, Greg, you guys said anything? You've already had.
I have nothing specific.
No, you guys have already been beaten up enough tonight. Joe, anything? No. Erica, we have no village attorney tonight.
No village attorney tonight. I let her have a night off.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Pinching pennies.
I actually did mention that when I said the text. Save the residents a few bucks. I just have a quick note that I was thinking that we may be one of the only villages that has a mural on their village hall. And yesterday I was driving through Glenview, and they have a mural on their village hall. Glenview has a mural on their village hall. It's crazy.
It's okay. We're not done coming up with ideas.
Step ahead.
Yeah, darn it.
Okay.
Go to Glenn's.
Was it? So, okay. I don't believe we are going into executive session.
Nope.
No? Okay, so then I will entertain.
So moved.
We should adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks. Okay. Oh. Go in. Dr. Jerry, you know, and give that information.